I'm Chris Sheridan with eNom. I'm here today with Brian Cute in a follow-up interview to talk a little bit about the domain name industry in general. As you know, Brian, the market has surpassed 200 million total names registered, right? And I think what probably myself included and probably some of my resellers aren't 100% up to speed on is what is PIR's thought on, where do we go from 200 million? You guys have a lot of interesting initiatives and with ISOC and yourself about how you envision basically bringing domain names to more of these global markets.
It's a great question, and I mean, first of all, tremendous success. 200 million is phenomenal, and to see the growth accelerating in the last few years too, it shows that there's more growth to be had. But you're right, a lot of that growth has come in developed countries, North America, Europe. Certainly there's geographic disbursement of registrations, but there's also, where's the next billion coming from? And we know that the next billion is going to be coming primarily from developing countries. So we at PIR, number one, I think for the health of the internet needs to reach everybody on the globe. I mean, just philosophically as public interest registry, that's important to us. And so beyond just selling .orgs, extending the internet's reach should be a priority for everybody. With a focus on domain names, we are in the coming months and years going to put a very heavy emphasis on selling .orgs in developing countries. So we're going to have particular programs. I know that you're going to put some focus on it at eNom. And really it's about extending the internet and getting people online because, in 15 short years, more or less, I mean, we've seen what can happen when people are connected, when people are online. I mean, you look at what's just happened in Egypt, and we see the power of the internet. So those are really important core values to us, and that's where we're going to be putting a lot of emphasis and focus as a company, and I think it's to everybody's benefit. And to be working with you and to be working with your resellers to make that happen, that just makes a lot of sense.
No, I think that's a very good point. We've always been a big fan at eNom of any program that focuses on these underserved markets, right? I mean, it's better for us if we can partner with a company like PIR and approach those markets together than trying to do. I don't think we can do as much on our own, just on our own efforts. But this is an interesting point. Another kind of question I get a lot from resellers, especially when we're overseas doing specific conferences in Asia or Europe, is multilingual domain names. And I think eNom offers multilingual domain names, but we're not really big in multilingual domain names. I'm just curious, just at a high level, how is multilingual domain names going? What's your guys' thoughts around multilingual?
Well, we've launched IDNs. First of all, IDN.IDN, where the second level and the TLD are both an IDN, is going to come when the ICANN new TLD round gets launched. So we're going to put applications in when that comes and start launching IDN versions of org. And that'll be part of our international strategy for sure. But we have done IDN versions, the second level IDN.org in ASCII in a number of different languages. The uptake, quite frankly, hasn't been very robust, but we felt it was important to start reaching out to those communities to start selling a version of IDNs. And in fact, we're getting some good learnings from that. And sometimes there's pretty significant dislocated communities that are living outside their country that we're seeing particular pockets of uptake. So it's been slow in coming. The CCTLDs, as you know, have had the gate opened. They can sell IDN versions of their TLD. So they're starting to do that, lay that groundwork. But we're absolutely committed to that. That's part of our international strategy. That's part of expanding the web. That's part of making the web accessible to people outside the English-speaking world. So that's important.
It kind of goes hand in hand to what we were talking about earlier is, it's one thing for eNom and PIR to try to partner up, bring the availability of domain names to these underserved markets, and kind of just offer .org. That's a much better program when you're going in there and saying, not only do we want to try to make it more easy for you to registered domain names, but they're in your native language. I mean,
Right.
It's almost, you almost need both to kind of really have a very successful campaign in these different markets. And I think
I agree.
that's when I think about eNom and how we want to participate in this growth outside the United States, outside of North America, the kind of these areas that are heavily penetrated. I think that's when I start to rethink our IDNs and about how we can partner with companies like PIR, especially to your point on IDN.IDN, and I think that gives us a much stronger message when we get serious about these markets and say, hey, look, it's not just about domain names, it's domain names in your native language. Right?
Absolutely.
So I guess the only other thing that kind of comes to mind, we're speaking just about kind of global trends in the domain name space, is social media. And we use social media a lot. We see everybody using Twitter and kind of the obvious Facebook, LinkedIn. What do you guys? How do you guys see social media influencing PIR? Does it influence the registry, or is it helping you in getting your message out?
Well, it's a great question. From a market perspective, of course, there's concern that social media platforms could begin to replace domain names, right? So there's always that concern a bit that we all think about. But domains keep growing, 200 million plus, we're going strong, so I don't think that's a serious concern. But what it has demonstrated is how the internet, how people come together online and use it. And again, I'll give you another example. There's a failblog.org, which is just it's a humorous place where people come together and upload funny videos and make each other laugh. Another example of like a social media type of organization around a .org and people coming together. So we're seeing social media communities come together in the domain, not just in particular other platforms like Facebook or others. But I think it's been a positive. I think it's positive for the overall ecosystem. The more people are online, the more people want to come together and connect, the better it's going to be for our business, and the better we can serve them.
Social media to me has always been a perfect match for PIR because when I look at the way your website has evolved, the registry website, that site, the one common denominator with that site is that it's more interactive. It's not just a kind of stale registry site. This is where I enroll to become a registrar. You guys are really trying to engage the community, and I feel like when I think of registries leveraging social media, I think PIR is one of the ones really trying to kind of get their brand out through that. But I think what's interesting for you guys and what's interesting to me as a registrar is to see how end users talk about .org. That's what always captures my interest when I see people talk about something they've read on .org or on PIR or their kind of perception on .org, because as much as we're sitting here today kind of sharing our thoughts about .org and the trends in the domain name industry, at the end of the day that feedback is invaluable when you see those end users talking about it.
And I'm glad to hear that. That's really good to hear. It is important that we use social media, all of us use social media to extend our message, reach our customers. And just another thought I had with respect to Egypt, we look at social media and we try to think, how can we position org side by side with certain social media platforms. So in Egypt, Facebook was used as the platform to get people into the square, right? To do the uprising, to overturn the government, to change their society. And that type of social media platform has served an interesting particular use. But think about when a government's been overthrown and now people are in the middle of rebuilding a new society, adopting democracy, building institutions. .org. You think about that, what a perfect environment for .orgs, now that they're going to have different organizations, they're not living under a dictatorship. So it makes us think about how we can position our product side by side, how the one helps the other, and I think it's all a positive impact for the web, for the internet, for the user.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming to eNom, Demand Media's headquarters today.
Indeed.
Sharing your thoughts. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Brian.
Yep.